Who has the right-of-way at intersections and when should I yield? Part 1. Where two or more roads cross, intersections are created. Drivers utilizing a crossroads must rely on right-of-way legislation to identify who goes first because this congeals opposing streams of traffic. To maintain traffic flowing in a safe and orderly manner, there may also be traffic control equipment like road signs or traffic lights present, depending on the type of intersection you are dealing with. Right-of-way traffic laws will be important in preserving order even on intersections with full control in these devices. Nowhere are drivers more vulnerable to danger than when they merge into a lane gap or cross a diverging stream of traffic. These two actions usually take place at crossroads. Drivers must be aware of right-of-way laws and develop correct judgment skills in order to choose a safe route through an intersection. Getting ready to use a crosswalk. When deciding who is right-of-way at a junction, drivers must take several things into account. Decide which lane you must be in to follow the path you want to take, then merge into it as soon as you can. After that, look at the road near the intersection to respond to the following queries. 1. Does the crossing have any traffic lights? If so, these will decide which streams of traffic can enter the intersection in what order. 2. Do any lanes have a designated use? If you need to make a turn, merge into a protected turn lane to reduce right-of-way problems. 3. Do you have a clear view of every entry and road leading to the intersection? If a barrier blocks oncoming traffic, you might incorrectly believe it is safe to proceed through the crossing. 4. How congested is the road? When approaching a crossroads, the most danger comes from the cars in front of you. Keep a safe following distance in case the cars in front of you have to stop or slow down at the intersection. Right-of-way at uncontrolled intersections. Drivers are solely guided by their understanding of right-of-way regulations when an intersection isn't controlled by traffic signals or road signs. The important guidelines to keep in mind when establishing right-of-way without assistance from traffic control equipment are discussed in the sections that follow. Keep in mind that nobody legally has right-of-way unless another car has ceded to them. Forcefully asserting your right-of-way because you believe the other vehicle should yield is illegal and goes against the purpose of right-of-way laws, which is to promote the safe and orderly flow of traffic. Allow another driver to have the right-of-way if they do so at a junction. It's first in, first out. Vehicles typically arrive at an intersection at various times. Since the first in, first out rule is in effect in these situations, it is simple to determine who must yield. The first vehicle to arrive at the intersection has priority, subsequent vehicles must surrender until the first vehicle has fully exited the intersection. Obey the right yield. When two or more cars approach an intersection simultaneously, who must yield is determined by the second crucial right-of-way rule. Drivers are required to provide the right-of-way to the car to their right when two cars arrive at the same moment. When multiple automobiles enter the intersection at once, it is possible to determine who will move forward first by making eye contact. If required, signal another motorist to proceed through the junction before you. If the route to your right is clear, yield to the right, does not mean you can just drive past the intersection. Keep in mind to be on the lookout for vehicles coming from the left and confirm that they will yield before moving forward. Right-of-way when making a left turn. When two cars are approaching a junction from different directions and one wants to proceed straight through while the other wants to make a left turn, the motorist making the left turn is required to yield. If there is no cross traffic, opposing traffic can typically pass through an intersection at the same time. However, in this scenario, the path of the motorist making a left turn would directly obstruct the path of the opposing driver. Any driver attempting to make a left turn at a crossroads, into a driveway, private road, or into an alley must yield to oncoming traffic. In general, vehicles turning at a junction should give way to vehicles passing through it directly. In fact, when there are traffic control systems, this may not always be the case. On single or two-lane roadways, the right-of-way. You must stop and yield to all traffic on the larger road before moving forward if you are on a one- or two-lane road that meets a bigger road with 3 lanes or more. This is due to the fact that the wider route is probably busier and more dangerous, making it more difficult for drivers on that road to surrender right-of-way. In T intersections, the right-of-way. The same rules apply to traffic at a T intersection approaching a through route from an ending road, it must yield. The through road that forms the top of the T is frequently a faster, busier road. Even if this isn't the case, it would be absurd and challenging for through traffic to stop for adjacent traffic. Roadway rights on unpaved surfaces. Where paved and unpaved roads join, drivers coming from the unpaved route must stop and let cars coming from the paved road pass. Who has the right-of-way at intersections and when should I yield? Part 2. Driveways and private roads have the right-of-way. A driver must yield to any traffic already on the main road as well as any pedestrian traffic attempting to cross the driveway's entrance if they are attempting to access the main road from a driveway, alley, or private road. You should stop completely before the sidewalk whenever something blocks your view of it from either way so that you can look for pedestrians before moving on. In order to re-enter traffic on the road, drivers who have parked by the side of the road must also give way to moving traffic. Do not start signaling your turn until you have approached the intersection if you are turning into a driveway or alley that is located immediately behind one. If you don't, you might mislead other drivers. Right-of-way at controlled intersections. Traffic control elements, such as street signs or traffic lights, at least partially determine who has the right-of-way at controlled intersections. It is crucial to keep in mind that traffic control devices rarely eliminate all potential conflicts, necessitating the consideration of right-of-way laws. For instance, a green traffic signal may allow you to turn left at a junction, but you must still yield to incoming traffic if the turn is not protected. Controlled intersections are often safer than uncontrolled intersections thanks to the support offered by traffic control equipment. This is only true, though, if drivers drive carefully. Even if a road sign or traffic light says you can go, you must always make sure the intersection is open and that no other cars will block your course of travel before moving forward. Some intersections are only partially managed, with stop signs placed on some roads but not others. When approaching a crossroads from an uncontrolled entrance, use caution because other vehicles might not always give way as they ought to. Crossroads with a stop sign. Every vehicle approaching the entry of an intersection regulated by a stop sign shall come to a complete stop and relinquish the right-of-way. Remember that if a traffic officer sees you stopping at an intersection with a stop sign, they will issue you a ticket. Full stop denotes just that. Even when they have already stopped behind other vehicles waiting to reach an intersection regulated by a stop sign, many drivers are unaware that they must halt before proceeding. You must still come to a complete stop at the authorized stop line or before the pedestrian crosswalk and yield to any oncoming traffic or pedestrians even after all cars in front of you have passed through the intersection. Right-of-way at four-way stops. Four-way stop crossings should be handled similarly to uncontrolled intersections. Drivers that are simultaneously approaching the intersection must come to a complete stop and yield to the cars on their right before moving forward. If not, the first in, first out rule is in effect. At yield signs, the right-of-way. Any driver approaching a yield sign at the entry to an intersection must yield the right-of-way, albeit they are not always obligated to stop completely unless safety absolutely requires it. Even though there are no stop signs at the crossroads, a traffic police may issue a ticket if they feel you should have stopped for safety reasons. If another vehicle is blocking the junction or is close enough to the intersection to be a hazard, drivers must stop and yield the right-of-way at intersections regulated by yield signs. Right-of-way at stop signs. When an intersection is controlled by traffic lights, it is typically abundantly clear to whom the right-of-way belongs. Drivers may proceed cautiously when facing a green light, but must yield to oncoming traffic when turning left, unless the turn is protected by a green arrow signal. Red lights always signal a stop, whereas yellow lights advise motorists to stop if it is safe to do so. However, a number of additional criteria can affect how moving cars that have stopped at a red light may proceed. Reading traffic lights. All student drivers must consult their state's driving manual for specifics regarding right-of-way regulations in their area at red lights. Even so, the following guidelines are generally applicable. When the signal is solid red, approaching traffic must wait until it turns green before proceeding through the intersection. When confronting a stop sign, traffic may move forward one car at a time if a flashing red light is present. Unless there is a sign that reads "No right turn on red" displayed at the intersection, most states allow turning right when the signal is red. See your driver's manual for more information. Where right turns are permitted on red, the vehicle must stop completely and give way to all oncoming traffic and pedestrians before making the turn. The majority of the time, automobiles are allowed to turn through a red traffic light when leaving one one-way street and entering another one-way street. Yellow contractory lights. Yellow traffic lights that flash are quite uncommon and might occasionally surprise drivers. You must treat this signal exactly as a yield sign if you see it at a junction. This entails slowing down if necessary, giving way to all pedestrians and cross vehicles, and crossing the intersection carefully. When traffic lights fail, right of way. What happens if traffic lights that are typically used to control an intersection aren't working when you get close to them? Without right-of-way regulations, such scenarios would be chaos. Any lane of traffic confronted by an inoperative signal must treat it as a stop sign when traffic lights malfunction. The intersection must be treated as a four-way stop with each driver coming to a complete stop and yielding to their right if all lanes are facing an inoperative light.